Welcome to the Sports Startup Digital Debate Competition, brought to you by Pitch Madness and in partnership with the Esports Biz Group. My name is Tyler Kelly, founder of Pitch Madness, and we are really excited to bring you two opening round Sweet 16 debates tonight for the esports and gaming track of this tournament. We have some amazing founders and judges for you to listen and learn from tonight as they will square off head-to-head to debate various topics around the esports and gaming landscape. Before we get underway, a special thanks to Nadal Harvey, our studio editor, who has brought all this great content to life, and Nick Hayden, founder of Sports Biz Group and my partner in crime in getting this project off the ground. Last but not least, this tournament's main goal is to promote the amazing founders competing in an effort to help them find valuable connections and potential investment to get their company to the next level, along with our Pledge It campaign that is raising money for the CDP COVID-19 Relief Fund going to help frontline workers in the healthcare industry. Please donate whatever you can, even if it's only $1, so we can help folks risking their lives to keep us safe and sound. Use the hashtag #DebateForCovid. With all that said, let's intro our founders. This founder's claim to fame lives inside a pylon. Let's just say he doesn't trust referees much. Watch out, Nick. Give a growl for Mark Rowley and Live CGI.
Welcome into the Live CGI studio. My name is Mark. I'm the CEO of Live CGI, and we're going to give you a quick introduction for Pitch Madness. This is important to tell you. This is a straight-up CGI studio. You know what that means? Nothing here actually exists. It's all virtual. So instead of spending $3 million on a studio, spend a little bit less, actually a lot less, just a few pennies on a virtual studio. That's the pitch. And here's what we're telling people. If you do an esports event and you want to sell the graphics around it, normally you sell the graphics on screen for maybe $100, maybe $1,000. But go with $100 for right now. We're telling people, sell that graphic up there for $75, those over there for another $75, and then these ones on the bottom, why don't you sell those for $25 a pop? You sell 6 of them, you know what that means? You got $300 in revenue. Different than $100. That's math people can live with, and they understand. The benefit about this studio is it can be used for anyone. It's almost like Velcro for making content. So you can talk about brackets if you want, or you can talk about, hey, you know what's cool? Sometimes people get judged. Guess what? We're about to get judged by a lot of judges. A lot of judges being judgy. We're excited about it. That's part of the process. And then when you're done, you fly back into this. And the beautiful thing about the studio is everything you do in a regular studio exists right here. You can have logos, you can put things in, you can do avatars. Anything is possible inside Live CGI. We have revenue, we have customers, we're working with people. It's super exciting. NBA is with us. Helix is working with us. Wounded Warriors is working with us. Another De Facto is working. There's more companies. So revenue, recurring revenue, and a business model that is SaaS and blowing it out the top. So if you're interested, Live CGI, livecgi.com. Check us out. My name is Mark, the CEO. Have a great day. Thanks for the time. Deuces.
Did you ever wonder what happened to Aaron after being sent to Shag Hennessy's office? Well, let's find out. Make some noise for Aaron Fletcher with Repeat.
Hey guys, I'm Aaron Fletcher, the founder and CEO of Repeat. I've been a part of esports for over 15 years, building technology, organizing large life-scale events, and was a professional gamer achieving top 5 in the world in multiple titles. Repeat's one of the largest esports tournament platforms in the world, where we've hosted more than 19,000 tournaments and 30 million games to date. Our tournaments are automated, have 5 times the engagement and 90% fewer disputes than competitors. Also, we're the only platform that can scale to more than 1 million competitors in a single tournament. Some of the brands we've helped along the way include Western Digital, Uber, Gillette, and for our Fortnite launch in a few weeks, we're working with the US Army. If you're a brand that wants to target gamers in a positive way, I'd love to chat, so please feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Thank you, founders, for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
This is the Sports Startup Digital Debate Competition, and we are part 1 for the Esports and Gaming round. Today, we're joined with 2 amazing founders. Mark Rowley, the founder of Live CGI, and Aaron Fletcher, the founder of Repeat. They're going to be debating head-to-head, and we're going to start it off with a coin flip to decide who receives the question first. So, Mark, would you like heads or tails?
Tails.
Tails. It is heads. So, Aaron, would you like to receive the question or would you like to defer?
I'll go first. It's fine.
Amazing. So, when I ask the question, you guys will have 30 seconds to respond each. After your answer, then the other opponent will be able to counter that question. Does that sound fair with you all?
Sounds good.
All right, let's get it on. Cool. So for the first question, how can startups remain authentic to esports and gaming culture while scaling into larger corporate entities?
So with culture's a very kind of touchy subject, especially throughout gaming. And I think one of the biggest things with culture is it's not being authentic to esports or gaming. One, they're two very different industries, gaming versus esports, but it's being authentic to your audience. So regardless of how you're going to do it, any whatever way, you need to know your audience. You effectively, if you're a startup, you have to hope and you're funded, you have market fit. If you've got market fit, you should essentially know your audience and your messaging should portray that. So as an example, mobile, majority of those users are female. So female-centric for those games that they're playing. So your audience and your message and your culture needs to be very different. To if you're building a hardcore esports product that's competitive, your culture needs to be kind of portrayed towards that. So you need to make sure that your advertising, your messaging, that everything like that goes out is the right message for that audience.
And I think from my perspective, you got to look at it as esports and gaming are not the exact same thing. And that's the authenticity that you talk about. If you're going after esports, it's competition. If you're going after gaming, you're gaming for fun, relaxation, all kinds of things. You can be competitive in gaming, but esports is really about that core competition, about the storytelling of who's playing what, where, when. And I think that's key. What Aaron just talked about, knowing your market. If you don't know your market, you're sunk. It doesn't matter if you think you have a good story or not. If you're not actually hitting the target people, it's not worth your time. So I would say if you're going to think about it and you're trying to figure it out, you've already missed a part of it. Go back in and focus on before you get in there, because anyone in esports is going to want to be talked to and want to be communicated with and be shared with in a way that's authentic. If they find you're selling out in a way that doesn't work, they're going to bail on you.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. Like, I think it's making sure that you hit your target, and then along those lines, make sure that you get that message right. So the different users, the different segments, and if you want to target another market, that message changes, that story changes, everything that you're talking about changes. So you need to make sure that you hone in on who the hell you're talking to. Talk to your audience, because you may not even know at the end of the day, your audience, you may think it's something very different to what it actually is. And there's so many products out there where that's happened. So if that story changes and that audience has changed, change your message, change your product, change whatever needs to be done. Listen to them.
Yeah, or you can ignore it and you can simply say, that's a market I'm not going to go into. And that's a hard decision to make. Is, okay, the story's changed, but I just don't feel a market there. We have people approaching us about medical stuff right now that have been going on. I'm like, it's not our market. We're going to have to stay away from it right now because we just don't have the capacity to scale up. And that's just the nature of business sometimes.
I think it's also I do think that is the nature of business, but if you've got opportunities there and you've got investors, you've got these other people there that you've got to adhere to, and a big opportunity does come along, you still need to kind of focus on those points. So yes, and I agree, you need to stay to your core values, because if you're building a product you hate, why the hell are you doing it anymore? And it's not a market you want to do. But if there's opportunities there that you can make these minute edits, or you can go raise some more funding, because there's big opportunities come up and you're like, shit, we need to tackle this. Let's go get the stuff that we need so that we can still focus on our core product, but we can still create a team that can build towards that market where we know there's revenue. We know they want to pay us. We know they're there.
Yeah, my only concern there is I don't want to go after something and kill myself in the process and lose my scope. So that's the only difference. Sorry, Nick.
Next question on that from the revenue standpoint. So what is the biggest source of revenue, B2B or direct to consumer? And why?
I'll let you go first, Mark.
It depends on your product, and it depends on where you're going to go. From our business right now, that's a question we have, because we're aiming B2B, building stuff up, and the B2B is growing, but we're having a lot of consumers that are saying, hey, we want access to this. So now we're sitting in a position where, like, hey, this is software. We've eliminated a lot of hardware. Do we unlock that? And it's two different business models about how do you support it. And we looked at how do we manage it. And I think right now we're staying B2C because we see B2B, that's the biggest growth. But the B2C is out there, but that's again where I look at focus is what I've seen kill a lot of startups. Oh, there's another thing here, it's a whack-a-mole. This is a good idea, good idea. Stop. Make sure you're hitting your core, and as you're hitting your core, then you can pipe something out. So right now we're at that point where we see the exponential growth and we see multiple exponential growth going, and we're like, hey, maybe we could go to B2C, but now let's stay to B2B, because I think in esports right now, the B2C market's been hit a bit, and I want to go B2B so we can actually keep growing on it and have brands get in there, because there are brands dying to get in. People are stuck, they're watching content. They want more content. let's do that B2B model because that's the biggest growth for us in esports.
Yeah, I think it's a mix between the two depending on your product. So if you have a product there that purely is focused on B2B, there is no B2C. It doesn't exist. I think the biggest kind of market is working between the both. So B2B2C. So I think that is where the biggest opportunity is. You work with these brands, you sell to them, that this huge audience that you're building through this B2C model. And if you can do that, you can tackle both sides of the market relatively quickly, earning large revenues from both sides. The brands help you by, one, fueling your marketing budgets. They also help you for giving you validation to the customer base. They're like, shit, you're working with Uber? Oh shit, this product is something I should look at. Or you're working with an influencer and they're like, oh shit, they bought on FaZe Clan. They're a big influencer or a big team. And they're like, that makes sense, let's do that. And I think you leverage that B2B relationships you have to make your B2C absolutely grow. That need you're talking about, Mark, is definitely there. And I think it's because brands are using your product and they're like, shit, okay, B2C, B2B. I think at the end of the day, it's you leverage them to get to the end goal. And I think for us, I think the profits in the end are going to be B2C, but I think the profits for us initially are going to be driving for the B2B. And I think it comes down to, if you build a good product, you've got market fit, you've got all these sort of things, and you build that B2C, eventually you can monetize that massive user base you built through those brands, that messaging, that authenticity, all those sort of things that you built with them, and relationships. I think that.
Yeah, I'm not turning down those markets. I'm not turning them down. I'm just simply talking about the timing and the sequence. And it's like, look, I get it. I see there's another market there, but back to your question, Nick. Right now, our biggest growth from our perspective is that B2B, and then we'll hit that B2C. But I agree with Aaron was saying, like, let's build a base, and then you can grow anything out of that if you want.
Yeah, I think it really depends on a product, right? So you have a different base for a different product. So if you can't really sell, like, I don't know, chewing gum to businesses as much. Like you can, I guess, you can go to Google and they can sell it to all their employees, but it's probably not going to be as profitable as being a consumer in every retail store across the world. And I think it's, if you've got a product that fits that kind of market, then you use it. If you don't, then you push towards B2B, and I think you leverage that to build that consumer side of things. Because I think you have a look at Salesforce, you have a look at these big companies, Oracle, all of them, they have done both. They do have their B2B as their core that builds on that, but they get their noise out there. The reason that everyone knows about these companies and everything like that from a B2C standpoint or in their business life is because they heard about it somewhere else. And I think that leveraging that is a big kind of deal.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. So, with the gaming landscape filled with large organizations controlling the majority of the IP and data, what business approach do you think will win for startups? Either trying to be a tool that supports larger platforms or finding a niche and build your own platform?
So I think there's two different types of IP, and I think we've gone through this at some other point there, where there's technical IP and then there's IP on their actual product. So they have characters, they have all these sort of things within gaming and esports. And I think technical IP, I don't think, in terms of from a software standpoint, it isn't as powerful. It hasn't always been to a degree. If you've got hardware patents, you've got shit around that's amazing. But the problem with a software patent, especially if you're a startup, there's not so much you can do with that. You'll only be able to defend it as much as you can afford to pay to defend it. So if you have a lot of money and you have a lot of capital, sure, go down that route. But it's much better to be remaining a trade secret if you're building this software out, or this technology out. And then you can keep it in-house. If you're doing something truly unique, they won't be able to replicate anyway. But from a consumer standpoint, I think you need to make sure that you act within the bounds on these other companies. So don't screw with their characters, don't screw with their logo, don't screw with that, don't mess up the shit that they've spent millions upon millions upon billions building these massive brands and these characters and their assets. Don't screw that up. Work with them. And I think from a business standpoint, it's both. So it comes down to scales. So if you want to build a small company, 50 million, 100 million, yeah, you can probably focus on one of the two niches. But if you want to build a big company, $1 billion, all those sort of things, you need to focus on both. You need to sit within basically helping and working with the companies, and then building this niche, as well as then going as big as you can and building tools that help them. And I mean, that's what we're kind of focused on with what we're building.
Yeah, and I think for us, we're technical IP, and you know, it might be sound bad, but we are the software IP that you talked about, Aaron. But you can defend your patents, and we got one that just got approved last week, in a way that even though people are out there doing it, you can send cease and desist. You can go down there without spending a lot of money, and you can look at it and they can look and say, well, are we worth acquiring them, or what are the options? Like, there's multiple things you can do. And the biggest mistake I heard people starting initially was don't patent your stuff. Don't do it. Just go out and build it. And I think that's the biggest mistake you can make. If it's worth it, it shouldn't cost you much to do a patent, a couple grand, and just call it a day. And if you're spending $100,000 on a patent, you're wasting your time. But so procuring your IP is good. And I think back to the question you talked about IP related to marks, logos, creators. Yes, work with them. Don't fight them. It makes no sense. So to your question, Nick, I'd say something niche in the platform will grow and create an opportunity. But if you really want to create $1 billion opportunity, then you're going to have to fight somebody. And sorry, it is what it is. You're going to have to get in there and slug it out. And people talk about, well, YouTube fought all these people at a certain point in time, and now it's a great marriage. It is, but it is because they're willing to fight. And they're willing to build a platform that, started as user-generated content. Now all those brands are on it. So if you're going to go out there, you got to be willing to play a little bit on both sides, make it nice with everyone at first. But then if you really want to build growth, you're going to have to take someone on, and it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to fight. You're going to get in there. But if you believe you have something, go fight for yourself. So I would say start with a niche and then grow. But if you go out and you've raised $1 million and you're going to try and draw a mustache on Mickey Mouse, that's a pretty bad idea. Don't fight that way.
The only problem I have is, yes, you can go fight them and you can fight other startups and you can fight that, but trying to fight a company that owns the game and you're in the gaming industry, you're pretty much screwed. Because if they own the game, they own the IP, you're not going to go and rebuild their game. And I think I agree, fighting with other startups there to be able to take what you can and grow. But I'm of the belief of esports is huge. I don't know why the hell half of us are even fighting about anything, because competitors do not kill your companies. Market fit and foundership issues are the two things that kill your company. Over 60% of companies die from that. Whereas only 2% or 3% of companies die from competition, and it's Amazon acquiring you. It's not them doing something nefarious. It's they kills you by acquiring you. And I think that is the core thing is, I think it comes down to co-opetition with esports. It's still new. It's still everyone's learning shit. Most people don't even understand how to monetize the industry. So if you work together and you build this pie as big as possible, and shit, let's fight over that pie later. Let's do that. But I think if you're a startup and you're focusing on your competition too much, you probably already fucked up. At an early stage, and you're looking at every news feed, and you're like, oh my god, I'm worrying about they're launching this product. It's so much better than ours. That feature. Who gives a shit? Build your user base, build your core, make everyone happy. Those users, those everything like that, and have them talking about you. It's much better than that little feature of that button that they did better.
All right, and that's the 10-minute mark right there. So great answers, but we got a surprise. We got an overtime question. Are you guys ready for that?
Oh, good.
All right. So the future of gaming industry is most likely consists of ton new exciting technology. Some are split between how virtual reality will play. What's your opinion? Do you think virtual reality become a dominant tech or more of a side option in the space?
So I was a big believer in virtual reality. Was nominated for an Emmy in virtual reality storytelling 2014, 2013, somewhere in that range. And it's cool, but there's a hardware gap, right? And people have to get through the hardware gap. And in AR, there's 3 billion phones that can already do AR. So back to the point that Aaron was making earlier, why are you fighting this battle? I love VR, I love VR, I love VR. Great, but it's not in the people's hands. Go where the market is. Go with the AR function, because that's where it's going to be. I think virtual reality and gaming, you've got to start thinking about things like, how do people's eyes process? How do their eyes track? How many people can actually see depth? There's a lot of that functionality that come into play. How much am I flashing the images back at them? Just the hardcore software to build it. We just watched a lot of money get dumped into Magic Leap because they believe they could do all this stuff and create this market. And there's 100 startups, 200, 300 startups that could have been funded if the VCs would have just spread the money around a little more. And you could have had a better shot. It's diversified investing. But with Magic Leap, people just poured money in because we thought it was going to work. It's the same with VR. Stop doing that. Put some good bets out there and you're going to see it grow, because you're going to see pieces that'll hit. And when I think about VR and gaming, there's so many times I've watched people spin their head around and fall over in a chair, that it's about the storytelling. If you can figure out how to keep people focused, couch VR is still the best VR out there, because it allows people to calmly sit where they're going. And if you want to play it in Peoria, Illinois, if you want to play it in somewhere in Malaysia where someone can just get it and get access to it, there's still a lot of bandwidth and hardware issues. So VR to me, it will grow. And I'm a big believer, but not right now. I'd focus on AR first.
Yeah, I've been doing VR for a long time. I remember I was very young in 1995, and I remember going to an arcade. There's this big, gigantic machine. You throw a headset on. Honestly, nothing's really changed as much. I then also did a thesis in 2003 for one of my college applications or college projects there, where we built out VR and you were doing feelings and emotions. And yes, it's amazing. People feel very different things. But the problem with it is the thing that drives technology in the gaming industry especially is competition. So you have a look throughout history, every single video game that is huge. You've got Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft. Literally every game that is big has a competitive element. And the problem with that is they've done studies on it that games are much larger, nearly 5x, if they have a competitive element. They have a much larger user base, they have much larger lifetime, return value, all these sort of things. Without that, you then have a content engine, which is a problem. You can't think of content and bring that out on a weekly basis whereas a competitive element, it builds that content for you. And I think that's the biggest thing that's lacking in VR, because if I'm going to go play League of Legends and I'm in the top 5% or top 1%, I'm the top 100,000 people in the world out of 100 million, or the top 1,000 people out of 100 million, which is huge, which is momentous. And you can build stories and you can do cool shit around it. With VR, you're basically against 10,000 other guys that are sitting in their living room, and if you're in the top 10 out of 10,000 people, there's nothing that's exciting because it isn't accessible. So I think in 10 years time, VR is going to be huge for gaming, but I think it's probably even longer. I'd probably even say 20 years, because the technology needs to get cheap enough to get in everyone's hand. And I agree, AR is going to be huge. I think AR is where you're going to see a lot of things grow. I think VR in the next 10 years is going to work for spaces and for B2B. If I'm in the East Coast and I want to sell to the West Coast and I want to sell my product, or I'm doing architecture, I'm doing landscape, VR is an amazing tool to be able to sell and to be able to utilize that.
There's one last point. VR has a big problem right now. You got to wipe that thing clean. If you're going to do B2B, change the people, seriously, we're in a different world, man. Things change. That to me is why I look at VR. Hey, VR to consumer, walk into a store, try VR. Ain't no one going to want to try that on right now. That nuked a large part of the industry that people aren't even processing right now. You're going to go to a VR cafe. Am I going to want to try that on? I don't know what that person's done. There's a whole big dynamic range that just really shifting beneath us, where AR is fine because you can hold it there. So
I agree. I think that's actually going to be affecting a lot of industries, because I think it's the psychology behind it. And I don't think everyone's we'll have a vaccine in however long. It could be 12 months, whatever. It's irrelevant, completely irrelevant, because people's psychologies over the next 6 months are going to be led to not wanting to pick that up and not wanting to go to a stadium, not wanting to go do these sort of things. And that long-term effects are going to be definitely there, especially with, as you're saying, the VR headsets, but I don't think it just limits to that. I think it's any technology. Touchscreens are the big one. They're trying to figure out how the hell do we change a touchscreen in every store that's out there, because we can't do that. So that's a whole nother question, but yeah.
But it's an opportunity.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
All right, gentlemen, well, that's all the time we have. Great debate. For all those listening in, give us a hashtag #DebateForCovid. Let us know who you think won that debate. Thank you so much for your time, and we're going to be on to the next debate after this one.
And let's introduce our judges. First up, Joey Brander, President and Managing Partner at First Serve Partners. Next, Mike Cotton, Co-Managing Director of Wonder Gaming. And last but not least, Jose Vietes, Co-Founder and Director at Boomtown Accelerators. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, well, that was a great debate for the esports and gaming category, and now for the judges' votes. We'll start with you, Joey. Could you please provide some analysis and your vote on this section?
Sure. No, listen, and I want to congratulate both of our participants. I think they both did a phenomenal job breaking down their thoughts, perspective, thesis, ideas related to the industry and everything happening within it. I am going to have to cast my vote for Aaron. I think the way that he started out breaking down, one, the fact that esports and gaming are two very different industries with very different consumer bases, and cultures within them, and it's important to understand your particular consumer base and how to be authentic for the demographics and the cultures that you're looking to reach, as well as his focus throughout the debate on the fact that esports especially is still growing and adapting and changing, and many of the major players within it are still trying to figure out how to monetize their businesses and their products. And as a result, it's important for early stage companies in the space to use the advantage they have being early stage, which is being able to be nimble, to be adaptable, to run lean, to pivot if necessary as the industry evolves, and find other verticals or revenue streams or paths to monetization as things develop around them. So I think that Aaron's, the points that he made related to those things were spot on. Mark as well, I think for the AR and VR question was certainly in his wheelhouse, and with the production expertise that he has, that was apparent. But gonna have to cast my vote for Aaron. But congrats to both of these guys. It was a great debate.
Thank you for that insight, Joey. That was very helpful. We'll go to you, Jose, for your analysis and vote.
Yeah, I think Aaron came out of the gate strong. He set the pace for the rest of the debate. He just had a good first round answer, and you saw Mark kind of having to play rebound to a lot of his answers in the beginning. And though he had good points, he had good insights. Often, though, they were a bit overshadowed just because he was going second on some of those. When he did come up with starting off with his answers, they were strong. And yet I saw that Aaron was able to still provide really good insights. So I saw Aaron being able to take a rebound answer a lot stronger than Mark was, even if they had good points. Mark was a bit taken off when he was going second, kind of off footing there. Aaron was really good at playing the politician in a sense of kind of readjusting the questions. For example, when you asked B2B versus B2C, he said, it's B2B2C. This is actually what I believe. So he kind of recreated the questions a bit and yet stayed on topic, which allowed them to be really interesting as opposed to dodging of a question. So I think because of that, Aaron is my vote.
Thank you for that insight, Jose. And that makes sense that Aaron will win 2 out of the 3 votes. That will put him to the next round. Before we do that, I also want to get Mike's insight and analysis on that as well. So, Mike, if you don't mind kind of providing any commentary or takeaways that you might have.
Sure. And I'd like to echo the sentiment of the other judges. I thought they both did a great job. I think Jose hit the nail on the head in terms of Aaron really being the aggressor. And I mean, part of that dynamic was he came out of the gate so strong. And I do totally agree that Mark was almost playing catch up from that point. I sort of had a few notes. Aaron's note about audience and market fit being crucial to the authenticity issue was 100% correct. And that's the biggest mistake I see in this space is that brands ineffectively identify core values and market identification. It depends on the brand you're going after and the target market that you're trying to convert into sales. And I thought Aaron did a really nice job of sort of encapsulating that. Jose already covered this, so I won't spend too much time, but I love the way he pivoted the revenue question from B2B to C, which is also where I agree you find the most success. Validating the customer base, I think, is the key to leveraging B2B. And what he intimated, he didn't say it explicitly, is that what you're trying to do is engender FOMO among large brands. And I think he sort of correctly identified that B2B is the entrant point of least friction, but B2C is where you get the higher ceiling from a revenue standpoint and scalability. So, I don't want to downplay. Mark did actually make some great points, but I think Aaron sort of did the best in terms of how he messaged that. A business approach, obviously, like Aaron talked about technical IP having been proven to not work. We saw from 2016 to 18, a lot of investors were hemorrhaging cash into the space, thinking it was an arm race for franchises and technical IP. And we saw a lot of businesses where really mediocre patents were propping up valuations. So you're getting 15 to 20x revenue on investment, which is insane. And the industry has gotten wise to that. And I think Aaron did a great job of laying that out in the sort of business approach section. And then lastly, I mean, VR, I thought Mark actually did really great. That was sort of where I thought he sort of mounted a bit of a comeback. He's correct that the hardware getting into the consumer's hands presents a big challenge because, of course, you just have that sort of gap where if you can't get it in the hands of consumers, you're just never going to be able to scale it. And it's sort of the other part they didn't talk about was it's not conducive to driving live events, which I realize may be parked now because of COVID for 12 months. But when you have, these franchise models and billionaires that own the league and they drive a lot of the investment, especially as it relates to tech, they're investing their dollars in AR because they don't want to cannibalize their core business, which by the third quarter of 2021 is going to be how the hell do we fill these arenas again? So, Aaron talked about accessibility being a big issue, and I do agree that tech costs sort of need to come down for VR to the point where it can be mass produced and placed in everyone's hands. But I thought that was Mark's strongest section. But overall, I thought Aaron was the sort of the stronger contestant, and my vote goes to him.
Well, thanks for that insight, and congratulations, Aaron Fletcher. You're on to the Elite Eight. Best of luck to you, Mark Rowley. Thank you for a hard-fought battle in the debate. And Joey, Mike, and Jose, great insight. Hopefully that helped a lot of people understand the industry of esports and gaming. So thank you for that, and we're on to the next round of the Sweet 16.
He's part man, part machine, and believes the best things in life come standard with projectiles. Give it up for Michael Isakoff and RoboDuel.
Hey guys, my name is Michael Isakoff. I'm the founder and CEO of RoboDuels. RoboDuels is a real-life video gaming platform. That's right. We take real robots, real drones, and we let people all across the world connect to them and control them in real time. First-person view, third-person view, we support unlimited cameras. It's phenomenal. The best part is we've integrated a skill-based betting solution directly into our platform. We're building some amazing tech in robotics, and in the process, we're revolutionizing esports. The best way to experience RoboDuels is by going on roboduels.com. Thank you so much for your consideration, and we'll see you at the debate.
This gamer is so indie, he won't even buy AAA batteries. Make some steam for Marcus Blockchain Howard and Project MQ.
By the end of next year, esports viewership in the US is projected to surpass all other professional sports leagues except the NFL. Hi, I'm Marcus, the CEO of an experiential marketing agency that uses family-friendly esports to help colleges and other brands more effectively engage younger audiences. I've been playing video games since I was 6. I have an IT degree with a minor in management, 13 years of professional experience building and scaling various startups, and 7 years of professional experience in the $152 billion gaming industry. I'm also a featured speaker and published author on esports. Connect with me to learn how esports is the future of the sports industry and why indie games are the future of esports.
Thank you, founders, for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, welcome everybody to the Sports Startup Digital Debate Competition. This is the Sweet 16 for the Esports and Gaming Competition, and we have two amazing startup founders, Marcus Howard and Michael Iskov. We have the founder of RoboDuels and the founder of Project MQ going head-to-head in a debate competition. For this, we're going to do a coin flip to figure out who goes first. So I'll give it to you, Marcus. Who would you like to have, heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. All right, let's do this. It is heads. Would you like to?
All right.
Would you like to speak first, or would you like Michael to speak first?
I'll speak first.
Amazing. So we're going to kick this off. You're each going to have 30 seconds to give your answer, and then the next person can counter. Are you guys okay with those rules?
Sounds good.
Cool. Let's get it on. All right. So first question: are you for or against getting violence out of video games?
I'm against getting violence out of video games. I think there's a time and place for violence in a particular medium for a particular audience. Just like you have parental advisory over movies and TV, you should have that same kind of responsibility for your kids on what they consume in video games. So I think we should have violence there, but it just needs to have parents more aware of what's happening and allow the space to grow as it needs to grow.
Got it. And what would you say is your stance on this, Michael? Would you have violence in or out of video games?
Yeah, so definitely I am for violence within video games. Obviously you want to have it controlled. So basically respect ESRB ratings and also respect parental guidelines and give all the measures so that the right people are playing the right games. There is some controversy over this, necessarily specifically among teens. And it actually has been found that as games and esports has grown over the past 20 years, criminalization and crime has gone down. And it's found that it's a great way for people to let out their aggression. And it's also, kind of a core part of the entertainment value. So I would definitely keep it in, but just maintain some level of control for.
So how do you control it? What would be your stance for parents or people that are overlooking children that have their hands on violent video games? What would be your stance to control that? I'll let you go, Marcus.
You need to have more tools available for parents and also more education for parents. What they're doing is just turning on the apps and not really understanding what's happening in the space. What kind of variety is available between something as innocent as Rocket League all the way up to Mortal Kombat, right? All of that exists in the same ecosystem, but parents aren't well educated enough because the publishers aren't really doing enough, and the ecosystem as a whole. I think each of us can help make and raise the awareness about how to make this responsible gameplay.
Michael, what would you be your counter on that?
So it really comes down to the distribution platforms. So when you download a game from Steam or you download a game from Epic Games, and it has extreme blood, extreme gore, and it has an ESRB rating that restricts a certain age group, there needs to be some age verification process. A lot of companies decide to kind of like sidestep this a little bit, and just adding a little bit of stronger measures would kind of fix that. Although, to be fair, it hasn't been a tremendous issue necessarily that's overtaken the national discourse, and it's not something that's crime is not going up all of a sudden because GTA just came out. Actually, you'll see that there's a correlation between the Grand Theft Auto release dates and crimes going down, because people are just obsessed with the games. They're busy and home and playing games. So really, it comes down to the distributors.
Got it. So for the next question, what would video games look like in 10 years? What is your prediction on that?
I think in 10 years, you're going to see more virtual reality games and games that really kind of tap more into individual players, give them the ability to really kind of represent themselves and have the creativity, that their own mark on the gameplay experience. It's not just a cookie cutter model. It's something that maybe represents who you are individually, your activity, things that add extra elements to the gameplay experience.
In 10 years, where I see gaming is progressing beyond the base categories that we have right now. So you have FPS, MMO, and you have a bunch of these other categories. And in each one of those categories, you have one game that is really hooking on the mainstream. In 10 years, that trend will continue with more creativity and novelty in terms of game types, like the recent Battle Royale craze with Fortnite and PUBG. Really, when you're looking at turning gaming into something completely mainstream, and particularly the competitive part of esports, you really want to look at something that has a mass multiplayer appeal and either some sort of sandbox or some sort of competitive play, either sports or violence, and then put that all together into a package. Now, I can go on a little bit about how to make it like FC Barcelona level or Real Madrid level. In my opinion, that's by adding a level of spectacle to it, so that the average person who doesn't play video games at all could simply just look at it and see the game kind of in real life instead of people just looking at screens in a stadium. And that's kind of what we do at RoboDuels by trying to make this new category of gaming called reality gaming, where it's like a game that you would play as a gamer, but it's actually happening in real life and other people could watch it and consume it. So that's where I see gaming going in the next 10 years. Like, our pro gamers are gonna sit and control robots and fight each other. And it's gonna be really nice to look at, and a lot of people are gonna watch it.
And anything to counter on that, Marcus?
Yeah, you're already starting to see some of that happen. There's the augmented reality game, Hado. It's like digital dodgeball, right? So it has all the physicality of what you see in traditional sports with that gamified element. And to what we were talking about earlier, there's also indie games going to actually be really the future of the space. You talk about PUBG. PUBG created the entire battle royale genre. It never would have existed had that game not started first, and then Epic Games created Fortnite based on that gameplay experience. So you'll start to see a lot more mainstream and AAA studio publishers start to adopt the gameplay mechanics that are generated from the indie space, because indie is where the innovation is happening, and then it goes mainstream from there.
Nice. Next question would be, how do we solve the addiction of gaming in a constructive way? Whether it's violence or overconsumption, what would be your stance on how do we solve that problem?
I think you gamify the ability to play games for younger audiences where they don't really have the self-control they've developed internally yet. So, just like if you used to do chores when you were growing up and you had a star system, and if you got so many stars and your parents gave you something of value, you add that into your ecosystem so it unlocks a certain number of hours of play. That way that you're getting some constructive activity from the kids or adults, right? Before they have the opportunity to really enjoy the entertainment, so that you have that careful balance that you need.
Yeah, so on my end, I would say that what you have with sports, that's the example that I'd look at. With sports, it's a game, just like a video game could be, but there's the aspect of you're physically involved. So you're actually getting something constructive by throwing a ball in a hoop or, hitting a puck into a net. You're getting this physical aspect out of it. You're also getting the team aspect. Now you can get the team aspect out of video games, and that's kind of constructive and takes you away from the addictive side and how people develop socially by playing video games who would otherwise be antisocial. However, video games, I feel like, need a kind of layer of educational value, so that as you're playing it, as your brain is running on a bicycle and doing all these quests and stuff like that, and all these missions, you actually begin to learn a lot of things that have real life value. So, for example, a game like Age of Empires 1, 2, and 3, or Assassin's Creed, they put you in a historical setting and you actually learn about the history of the time. Similarly, if you can start integrating, kind of real life components, or in our case, like robotics, that's our pitch. It's basically to say, okay, you're controlling a real life robot, you're learning all the aspects of robotics, you're learning the fundamentals of robotics, and you're becoming literate, at least scientifically literate in this aspect, in this field. So I think that's where games need to go, is they need to really kind of, personalize and bind to these things that are more constructively educational.
And speaking on the education piece, that's some personal responsibility. You have the World Health Organization saying at the end of last year, declaring that there is an addiction, and again, there are some addictive components to over playing video games, but even in the midst of this pandemic, they then turn around and recommend this as a healthy social activity. So I think there's more that needs to be done about defining what piece of this is the addiction, and how do we address it in a meaningful way, instead of just slapping a label on it.
Amazing. So that's the 10-minute mark, but we'll have an extra question here. So are you for or against having mobile gaming becoming the leading experience for gamers in the near future? And that will be the final question here.
I'm for mobile gaming going mainstream in the future because it's more accessible. If you look at mainstream competitive spaces, there's not a lot of diversity and representation in the groups of people who get to participate in that. And I think there are a lot more people who have maybe $100, $200, $500 phone than they have several $1,000s worth of a competitive rig that you need to really be in this space. So I think it really opens it up for even different demographics, older demographics, younger demographics, a lot more people to get involved in this space when everyone has the same access to the same device to be a part of the experience.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see that desktop gaming is going to continue to be dominant for the time being, because I just don't see that mobile game that's going to unify everyone together. The big problem for competitive gameplay specifically, and that's why people invest in all these crazy rigs, and there's this whole huge industry behind, like getting the best gaming computer and gaming equipment. It's because of the input. So with your thumbs, you can only input so many commands at once. You can interface with the game only so much. However, with a keyboard, with a mouse, with a virtual reality headset, with a bodysuit, you can get fully immersed and integrated into the game and do things and actually like kind of almost merge with that digital world completely in a way that makes it so much more human and in a way that will be so much more entertaining for other people to watch.
That's a good point. But you also have controllers that are coming in as extra inputs for these machines. So if you look at, Microsoft is doing that now. You can take a $50, $75 controller and Bluetooth it to the mobile device. Now you have the extra input. You also have Google having the Google goggles, right? They give you the ability to take your same phone and create that VR experience. So while you're right, you definitely have more precise and more range of inputs and experiences with a more expensive rig. I think there are ways to step up the engagement on a mobile device, again, so that it has mass market appeal.
So the divide right now between the mobile kind of input and all these other kind of new things that you kind of mentioned, and the actual keyboard and mouse and kind of at-home VR setups, it's extremely wide. So I don't really see that coming out for another several years as it gets even more advanced. Even Magic Leap, I don't know if you ever use that, but it's kind of apparently the most advanced kind of VR system that you can get that is just like all in one, and it's still extremely limited. And it's going to be many years before that's even there, and then before people start making really, really compelling games for that. So for the time being, at least until the end of this decade, I really see desktop gaming and just gaming traditionally maintaining its course.
You make a good point there about Magic Leap, but also remember Magic Leap even self-describes themselves as not a gaming company. There's one of the reasons while the rest of the industry is booming, they had to go unfortunately lay off 1,000 people, right? They specifically intentionally designed it not to be a gaming VR platform. So while that's right, I think if you have something where a company is going all in on gaming, they can create something that's at a low enough price point but allows people to really be a part of the experience and enjoy everything that we enjoy with computers and desktop gaming.
Great job, guys. So that will conclude the first round of the Sweet 16 for the esports and gaming. Appreciate that. Please, everyone that is tuning in, drop any comments or recommendations on who you think won that round. But thank you guys for the first round and completing this.
And let's introduce our judges. First up, Waylon Chin, CEO and Managing Partner at First Serve Partners. Next up, Ben Kessler, Vice President at Maestro Sports and Entertainment. Last but not least, Lance Dietz, Principal at KB Partners. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, that was a great debate we just had with Marcus and Michael, and now we're on to the analysis and votes for our judges. So we're going to kick this off, and we're going to have Waylon, if you could provide your analysis and a vote for who you think won that round.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the first question. That question on violence. We've, as a firm at FSP, we've looked at a lot of studies and research into, this particular topic. It definitely is a point of consideration, I think, as we look at the space overall and how that affects, emerging generations. We take this very seriously. However, it's from our research thus far, it seems like there hasn't been any strong correlations in terms of violence in game and in reality. And I think I really appreciated Michael's point on this, where he touched on the stricter measures that publishers can take in terms of age requirements and better screening as to who their users are and gamers are on their platforms, and I think overall the professionalization of video gaming and esports has also helped that. We have kids that we've had on contract since they were 16, waiting in line to play on our Call of Duty team, for example, where there's top talent. So I think, and just to clarify, they were good, Halo players maybe. So there's definitely, consideration on that point, but I'll give that to Michael. And in terms of, the second question, as over the 10-year, sort of landscape as to what video games may and the whole gaming space might become, I'm gonna have to lean on Michael's answer as well there. I think, I personally, I feel that, that I agree a lot in terms of where, again, the professionalization of video gaming in general will dictate where the space goes. That's where the most money, resources, and fans will be. And, the sensationalization of the entire gaming experience through the professionalization of the sport and video gaming, in a sense, will lead that continued evolution of this entire space. So and then going back into like gaming specifically, I think game formats, they both had very interesting answers. I'm not a huge fan of VR AR personally, but I agree on that. I don't think, I've had this discussion a lot also with the team. It's like I don't think there's a perfect game format yet in terms of what is a perfect game for esports. So I think that we will see that to come in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm going to give that to Michael, and I think so overall, I think I'd give it to Michael on that debate.
Great. Thank you for that valuable insight. So, Michael, you have one vote for that, and then we'll move on to Ben. So, Ben, could you provide your quick analysis and your vote for who you think won the that round?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to say that was a great debate. I really enjoyed this topic, as you know, I believe that the esports is really in its infancy mode still, and still continuing to grow each and every day. So it was great to hear, you know, both sides of it, and the ideas, and what was kind of going on in the current state. I'll move on to the next question, was on addiction, and around that topic. And, you know, I really thought that both answers were great. You know, Marcus talked about the gamification and the whole ecosystem of unlocking hours of play if you were to do chores. And, you know, Michael went on to talk about, you know, comparing it to sports and what's going on. You know, too much of anything isn't good, but when you talk about, you know, when Michael went on to talk about the team aspects of things and the socialization and the educational, you know, aspects of what gaming could do, from, you know, his robotics platform of, you know, actually interacting with, you know, today's, you know, artificial intelligence and learning about robotics and other things you can learn within video games, not just having fun. I thought he did a great job of talking about addiction and bringing it to the real world, what we're talking about today. So I thought that Michael did a great job at that question alone, and won that question. Moving on to the mobile gaming side of things. Again, this is a very interesting topic, as people are using their phones every single day, and a lot of people are, you know, engaging in different content, whether that's Instagram and Facebook, or playing, you know, just mobile games itself. But, you know, an iPad versus, you know, using consoles and computers. So, you know, it was Marcus went on to talk about, you know, using controllers to when using mobile games versus, you know, Michael talked about being able to use multiple thumbs for, you know, computer PC gaming. And I thought he did a good job describing how the looking at the future of things. You know, mobile is very now, and maybe it was 5 years ago that, you know, mobile gaming coming out with all these different concepts around your phone. But, you know, the bodysuit idea and getting each person really involved and using multiple ways to interact with the games really excited me, and presented in a futuristic approach that I really thought, you know, could bring esports to the next level and continue to adapt to technology. So I thought Michael also explained that answer very well. And I was excited about the future of not only you know, adults, but kids learning through educational, you know, aspects of video games as well. And that kind of ties into the first question around violence, and just a common theme throughout is no matter what age you are, you can still be learning and learning different aspects of the world and educational purposes through something as simple as a video game. And I think that's what sports, you know, teaches us from a very young age, from all social aspects to educational aspects to technology aspects. So I thought overall, throughout, Michael did a good job of creating, you know, real world examples. You know, Marcus touched on a lot of points about esports, what's going on in today's world, but Michael did a good job of, you know, bringing his own ideas to life and talking about where it's going in the future. So my vote overall was Michael for the debate as well.
Thank you for that insight, Ben. And that gives 2 out of the 3 votes to Michael. So that would automatically make him to the next round. But we would still like to get the insight from Lance here on your analysis and breakdown on that round. So if you don't mind sharing your vote, regardless, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure, Nick. Thanks. Like Ben said, I thought it was a great debate. Both Marcus and Michael know a ton about the industry, have some strong views, and I thought did a great job bringing that to life. I won't rehash kind of what Waylon and Ben said about the industry, but I guess I'll highlight a couple things that I think they both, you know, touched on, and I think is kind of what's coming in the future. And one is the like social piece of games, like how do you bring more people into the fold? And it starts to blend a little bit too with this education piece, right? Like games are being used in a lot of different ways beyond entertainment. And I think it's really interesting to see how kind of, you know, people come for the game itself, for the education piece, but as Andreessen said, you know, like they stay for the party. And I think you're seeing that happening a lot more now. And I think this immersive experience of gaming, be it in AR and VR, be it via robotics, as Michael mentioned. I think this idea of like a synthetic reality that Bitcraft has talked about, and this idea of immersive experiences, like gaming broadly beyond entertainment, be it education, social, I think is really, really interesting, and something that we're looking forward to see kind of as the space unfolds. I also gave a bit of a nod to Michael in terms of the overall debate. I thought it was really tough. It was close. But in general, I guess what got me in terms of just, debate style in general is his ability to tap into, specific examples, backing up kind of his claims on certain things. And you saw Marcus do that a bit towards the end, but I felt like Michael did it better throughout each one of the questions. And so although it was tight, I gave my nod to Michael.
Great. Well, I appreciate that insight, Lance, and congratulations to Michael for winning that round, and you found yourself a way to the Elite Eight. So congratulations on that. I just want to thank Marcus as well for a great, well-fought debate. So thank you for everyone tuning in, and on to the next round.
Thanks for tuning in tonight. Hope you had fun and learned a few things. Check back in with us for more founder debate action tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and every night this week at that same time. You can follow the Live Bracket Challenge on the Pitch Madness website, and please continue to support our Pledge It campaign to raise money for the CDP COVID-19 Relief Fund. Have a great evening.